We actually have a wonderful set of organizers tonight, many different organizations coming together to talk about one very important, very timely topic, and that is affordable housing. We have two incredible speakers who are going to join me up on stage in a minute, but before we do so, we're going to run through a couple of introductions and speak about who has put together this event. So I'll go first. I mentioned this briefly. Out of a show of hands, who has heard of Build Canada before? Lovely, lovely, very good. It's at every event I go to, it's been slowly rising. It used to be like 20%, now it's like consistently 50. It's awesome. Yes, Build Canada, as I like to define it, is Canada's constituency for builders. This is an organization that was founded by some of Canada's top and most prominent entrepreneurs, coming together to speak about the ideas for a bolder and brighter Canada. This often takes the shape of speeding up and building ambitious projects. So this organization started about a year ago, and since then we've been publishing policy and content and helping to shape the culture of Canadians into that of an ambitious people who can accomplish the things they set their minds to, and ultimately, hopefully, be a leader on the global stage. This is the type of content that we put out. It's events like this. We travel the country and we meet with thousands of Canadians and speak about the topics most prevalent to them. As well as you should and can follow us on all socials, where we are constantly pushing out content and ideas and fueling the public discourse that has been recently very hot for Canadians. I'm going to hand it off now to the next partner for this event, Stephanie. Where did you go? There you are.
Hi, so I'm Stephanie. I'm with PropTech Collective. If you don't know about PropTech Collective, it's the largest PropTech community in Canada. The goal of this association is to support tech entrepreneurs and startups and connect them with real estate professionals and organize learning sessions and networking events. And so, much like Xander, we organize events all over the country. We have chapters here in Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, and Ottawa would be the latest chapter. So we organize loads of events. We release a lot of information content like the annual PropTech Canada report, which I encourage all of you to read. And we're working with Xander and the other sponsors that are going to introduce themselves after this.
Very good.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you. Hello everyone, bonjour. How's everyone doing? I know it's Thursday, but I think we can do more energy than that. How are you guys feeling? I try to warm them up for you guys. The rest is for you guys. How many of you guys have ever heard of FinTech Cadence? Yes, Joey, who heard about us 10 minutes ago. Love it. Have you heard of us?
Me.
Wonderful. Me. Thank you, Lynn, one of our startup portfolio companies. So wonderful. Glad you've heard of us. Very quickly, we are Canada's largest FinTech incubator. We very proudly started here in Montreal 9.5 years ago. And we've since opened offices in Toronto, Calgary, and the Atlantic region. And so we're really focusing on building and developing the FinTech ecosystem coast to coast, with the idea that provinces don't compete against each other in FinTech, but we're competing against the global powerhouses that will either enter FinTech in Canada or will come in and at least put a little bit of pressure. And so we as an organization, in large part, are an incubator, but we're very focused on three main things. One is FinTech curriculum education, academic research commercialization, if I can say that, with universities, and hiring talent to enter the FinTech space. Our second objective, is supporting FinTech startups. We work with startups who are in the early stages, from I have an idea, all the way until about pre-Series A, which is about 2 to 5 million in raises. So if you have an idea, if you know anyone that's interested in FinTech or excited or has a company in FinTech, make sure you come and speak to me after. I'll be here all evening. And then the last thing that we do is we work and collaborate directly with industry. We really believe that an ecosystem cannot develop unless it's developing with industry. And so we work very closely with the banks, TD Bank, Scotiabank, with MasterCards, with regulators, with universities, and of course with the FinTechs themselves. That's a really key priority for us. So I'll stop right here, but we do some really cool events. We have one coming up here in Montreal at the end of April. So if you're interested, if you want to know a little bit more, make sure you follow us on LinkedIn or just come and grab me at the end of the session today. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. We're all good? We're still paying attention? Awesome. So my name is Lynn Sock. I am the founder and CEO of Oni AI. I am also one of the chapter leads for Build Canada Montreal. I joined in November, and it's been exciting to work with Build Canada over the last few months. We've been through some times. We've been through some times together. So Oni AI is a prop tech company, and we help people find a partner in order to co-buy real estate. My background is an independent financial advisor for the last 20 years, as well as an ex-mortgage broker and a real estate investor. I've seen over the last 2 decades that housing affordability has been an issue, and it only seems to be an issue when it's election year. It's been an ongoing problem, and it hasn't been solved. So I was super excited to help with Build Canada, PropTech Collective, FinTech Cadence, and the panelists that you're going to meet shortly, to put this together so that we could finally stop talking about it and actually work on solutions that will help people. If you think that this is not your problem because you own a house or you own real estate, it will be your problem. Just step outside and look at what's going on in the city, in all the major cities in Canada. Ask your staff, ask your employees, your teams, ask the young people. You know, it's not fair that we cannot buy real estate in the property, in the communities that we live in. So I'm super excited about tonight's topic, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me afterwards.
Lovely. So now the speakers and myself are going to take the stage. Christina Smith and Natalie Voland, if you'd like to join me.
You want us to have 2 microphones?
Yeah,
I think
one
we're
is-
you're supposed to sit in the middle.
Oh, we're not doing this.
It's turned on.
We're not doing this?
Those ones are also on.
Okay.
That's a lot.
There's multiple microphones on. Yes. Don't mess around. Content is important.
Mine's on. Okay.
Lovely. Okay, thank you for being here, first of all. Very grateful to have both of you on stage, 2 incredibly accomplished individuals. On the far right, this is Christina Smith, the former mayor of Westmount. Served 3 terms, once as a city councillor and 2 as mayor, and has been a champion for housing and infrastructure in Westmount and the city of Montreal. A model example, in my opinion, of a citizen who steps up, builds things, and gets involved in the community in which she loves.
And then retires.
And then retires, yes. Recently stepped down a couple of months ago, as she told me in a content piece we just recorded over there. And then next to her we have Dr. Natalie Voland, who is a champion of real estate across all of Quebec. I found this fun stat, we were just chatting about it. Natalie's organization, Quo Vadis, correct?
Close. Quo Vadis.
Quo Vadis, pardon me, Latin.
Latin.
Yes, has restored 1.5 million square feet of historic properties and turned them into livable and usable workspaces for entrepreneurs and companies in Montreal. I think that's quite incredible, as well as a quite impressive portfolio of real estate development across the country, as I've heard. So I'll now allow both speakers to speak a little bit more about themselves and what brings them here today, and gives them passion about the problem. Christina, we should start with you.
Okay, I think we're on. Hi, everybody. I'm Christina Smith. I'm, as Xander said, I'm a recovering municipal politician. and I've known Natalie for ages, so it's great to be up on a panel up here with her, talking about an issue that is very near and dear to my heart. And if I had to summarize my 12 years in public life, 2 of the 2 things that we focused on most were infrastructure and renewal of infrastructure. And that's not just, I mean, it's no secret, our roads are absolutely terrible. And that's not just Westmount, that's, you know, all of Montreal. So but that's not just, it wasn't just roads, it's obviously roads, sewers, sidewalks, hydro, parks, public buildings, libraries, you name it. So we really invested heavily in that infrastructure plan over the years, and really, you know, I think really chipped away at a lot of the work that needed to be done. But what we also looked, and what I really became very passionate about, and certainly when I first ran for mayor, one of my promises was to redevelop the entire area around Atwater and St. Catherine, which had long been requiring some renewal. We knew it was going to be difficult. Many before had tried. And it always came back to, lots of community feedback of not wanting it, needing more public consultation. Let's discuss it more. Let's have lower heights, lower densities, and none of it was resulting in any change. And so we really worked very hard to try and move that forward and try and get a plan that responded to the community needs, which is more housing in the area, a renewal of an area that is completely dilapidated, and sort of reviving an area that is on the doorstep of downtown Montreal. So that was one project, but all the projects leading up to that, there is not an elected official across the country that will tell you that when you come in and you bring in a new project or new housing or whatever, there will always be opposition. So it's how you work with that opposition, how you find and build consensus within the community and accept that there will always be opposition to this, but to build that consensus, and everybody puts a little water in their wine and you try and get the best outcome for your community. And it was, I guess, as I look back, a lot of those projects, I mean, you're just astounded at the opposition to some of these projects, whether it's investment in a public school, whether it's building a jungle gym that is completely, it wouldn't meet safety code. There's opposition to that. Like, there's no shortage of examples of it, but I think and I hope that we are now finally at a stage in this country where all three levels of government are finally saying, okay, we got to do something about this, and we got to change some of the legislation to make these projects go through. So that's a little bit of my background.
Lovely. Natalie, would love to hear the same from you.
It's a little different because I don't do it. I'm just kidding. So I used to be a social worker. I took over my dad's business in real estate, knowing nothing. We started to take these heritage buildings and reconvert them, and we just realized that the way people manage buildings, renovate buildings, and rent them is all wrong. So it doesn't make any sense because a lot of times the end users are not even looked at or understood. We're building stuff that is on a boardroom table, trying to make sure that the performas work, and we're not understanding how we can use the spaces in a different manner. We are Quebec's first B Corp. So most people didn't understand what that was, and some people don't today, but it's about making sure that your business is aligned with your core values. So a B Corp certification is about people, profit, and planet, that one can't lose for the other. So every time we make a decision, it has to be on a triple bottom line, or we just don't make the decision, or make the decision not to make the decision. And then I had a midlife crisis, which we just talked about earlier, and a lot of people said that they couldn't build affordable housing in a way that would actually be carbon neutral. A lot of housing, especially at the affordable/social, because that is a difference. We'll talk about that a little bit later about the definitions. People were building crap, and it's not okay. We can't just cut corners on construction to build crappy things. Our staff knows 100% that we will only build what we will live in. If none of my staff or myself would live in the units that we build, then I'm not doing it. So we decided that the main issue between building carbon neutral and affordable housing at the same time is a decision problem. It is not a technical problem. Sometimes it's a financial problem, but if you work together, there's enough smart people around the room to be able to look that construction methodology hasn't changed in 100 years. Every other industry has changed, especially if you're talking about tech and all the things that you were talking about, entrepreneurship. Construction hasn't. So went back to school, got my PhD. I put my money where my mouth is. I refinanced everything, and I started a construction company, and we now build about 2,500 units across Quebec, carbon neutral, affordable rental housing, because people said I couldn't. Is that what my daughter does? She does? Yeah, okay.
Yes, I've become addicted to doing this instead of laughing.
Right?
To follow up on that, you mentioned something that we definitely wanted to talk about, and that is, Natalie, I have a question for you, and then Christina, I have one for you to follow up on. What exactly is affordable housing? Let's dive into that definition.
So everyone has a different definition. Your banker has a definition, depending on which banker. Different municipalities have different ones. The Canada Housing Mortgage Corporation has a different one. And it doesn't really actually make sense. So technically speaking, affordable housing is using 30% of your annual revenue on housing. That is actually impossible for a real estate developer to figure out what your prices, and your prices, because my construction costs don't reduce because of someone's capacity to pay. So there's also different definitions of affordable housing depending on the region that you live in, right? So some affordable housing is considered 30% lower than the market of whatever is there for median rents, as an example. And then there's a million other definitions. So we decided to go with Canada Housing and Mortgage Corporation to use those definitions because we just feel I'm not going to reinvent the wheel and cost it a different way. Affordable housing more on a typical level is, can my daughter who has a great job afford to live somewhere that is not in the middle of nowhere? So that's what we've decided to do, is to make sure that we can actually build great things in a community. But I welcome everyone to actually define what they're doing. So when you say affordable housing, sometimes people think social housing, which is different. So, and you were talking about opposition. Everybody has a comment about affordability. So we actually build between 10 and 40% affordable units in our market rent buildings, because I refuse to build ghettos. And I think that the best way to get out of a difference in affordability is about connections, meeting in the hallway, using the same common spaces, having kids play on a daycare gym together. We are all different people, born with different capacities and different opportunities for knowing people who are going to get you in the door. Communities have to be built accessible, that everyone could be able to live together without a little note saying who paid more rent than the other person down the hall.
No, precisely. I think that's a very cool definition. Props to you for when we were talking. We had conversations about this topic beforehand, and I have never heard the approach of mixing affordable housing into market rental buildings before. I think that's a fantastic solution. I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that tonight. But Christina, I have a question I'd like to ask you, and that is, housing, at least to me, is one of the most complicated problems that faces Canadians today. I do a lot of research on policy, and I dive into critical minerals, and it feels pretty straightforward to me, despite it being a pretty technical industry. Housing, on the other hand, everyone and their dog has an opinion on housing and what it should be and how it should be shaped. Christina, I'd love to hear from you, especially with your background, what you think are the major factors stopping us from building affordable homes and communities today.
Okay, that's a great question. And as Natalie said, just to like tag on to a little bit about what she was talking about, this term housing has almost become like a buzzword, right? It's an election issue. It was probably, in Montreal's election campaign, it was probably all day long, every day, every single candidate was told to talk about housing. The Prime Minister of Canada is constantly talking about housing. We have all, new federal agencies that are dealing with housing in a different way. So it truly is an issue of our times. It's one of the critical issues of our times, and it can mean all sorts of things. So if you ask some people, when you talk about affordable housing, they automatically can go towards the idea of homelessness and unhoused. I think it is criminal that we have upwards of 5,000 people that are going to sleep on the street tonight in Montreal. That doesn't even include the people that are sleeping in their cars or sleeping on a couch or wherever it may be. That's an issue, a critical issue of our time. Then we also have young people that can't get into the housing market. We have those that are, people move out of an apartment and the landlord then ups the rent by 25% because there isn't a rental registry. And that's not to say that they're going to control the rent, but information is power. So if you know what the person before you paid for that exact same unit with no changes to it, that information is powerful to the renter. So I think the definition is very, very broad in what people perceive it, but I think we are at a critical time, and that all levels of government are seeing that it is an issue that we absolutely need to deal with. I think there's lots of little tweaks that we can do, and then there's major things that we can do, and there's policy things like attaching, in the city that I was the mayor of, and it is, you could put it down in my failure column, in that we never removed parking minimums. So if you build a new unit, you have to have a parking spot that's attached to it. In some of the more denser buildings that are going to get built, you don't need parking spot for every single one, and it just drives up the cost of construction. Ultimately, that gets passed on to either the renter or the owner. And things have changed. People, transit-oriented development. If you're going to live above a metro, you probably don't need 2 car spots, but maybe you do. So maybe there's some parking available. And what we've seen as a major impediment to housing, I believe, across the country has been sort of the NIMBY effect. So the not in my backyard effect. And that has been able to stop housing projects or slow them or stall them to the point where it becomes just unbearable. And like Natalie has talked about before, that you just sort of pick up stakes and you're like, I'm going to go somewhere where I'm welcome, because you are the risk taker, you have the capital, you're the one building it. And so the provincial governments are finally sort of taking that power a little bit away from the clipboard. And that's the person going around getting the signatures to block housing. A great example of this is it's pretty low density. It's about 7 stories, around 7 stories. It was a building that was a condemned building. They built it. And so this new sort of condo unit of 7 stories that fits in the neighborhood, is actually lower than most of the buildings in the neighborhood, was next to a building that was not going to be turned on. It was going to be refurbished. It's an old armory. And it was the people in the new building that were blocking the build of their neighbors. And I was like, you just first of all just got here, and like you just did what they're trying to do, and you're going to finally have neighbors as opposed to an abandoned building. And they're like, I don't care. And I was like, you're comfortable? And they would say to my face, I really don't care. I don't want the trucks there. I don't want the noise. But it would be quite easy to just like get into a battle and be like, well, I'm morally superior to you because I do care. That's obviously what you can't do. You got to sort of understand what is the problem. And a lot of that information can be shared of like, yes, we'll have a truck route. Yes, we'll have it. There's all sorts of construction constraints that you can put in place. But a lot of it is just don't build it anywhere near me. I don't want to be disturbed. I don't want to hear it. I don't need more residents. And so that power, like we're never going to get anywhere if we continue to allow 11 people to sign a petition and block a building that's, abandoned, underused, when it could be a great home for, 30 new families that was smack dab in the middle of 4 different public schools. So it's, I think that's where we're finally seeing some movement, and you see that with like Projet de Loi 31 in Quebec, where, it overrides it a bit. You don't want to obviously nobody wants to take away power from citizens, but there has to be a balance there. And there has to be a looking at, the bigger picture, the future. What are these cities going to look like? Because if cities don't evolve, they end up, like the outcome is not great.
Precisely.
Doesn't. Yeah, there we go. No, precisely, right? It's eventually I use a pretty graphic term, but they bleed out. People leave.
Yeah.
They never evolve. They never fit the needs of the people that, are going to live there and continue to care and nurture for the place. You should want more neighbors. I think it's a generally good consideration. This is a takeaway from that. Okay, Natalie, I know you have a different perspective on what the problem is. We talked about it. Often people say that, we should just build more houses, but I know you don't believe that this is entirely a supply side issue. Would you care to dive into that?
So it used to be a supply issue, and then interest rates happened and lots of people built stuff that no one can afford. So if you look at Toronto right now, I think about 40% of the buildings of new construction are empty and unsold. So this is not a supply issue at this point. I think that we need to kind of like have our one-liners a little bit more updated. It's about the fact that people can't live in the things that are built for the price that they are going for in the market. Granted, if you are a real estate developer, even if you're a big bad developer, you still have to have a commercial viability because you have investors behind you. So you could say whatever you want, but they have built this building with the understanding that they're going to have a certain return on their investment based on the money that they put in. So we could blame everybody all the time, but the fact is that it's not a supply issue in my opinion. I don't necessarily, I'm not a politician. I can't say any of those things more officially than that's what the world is. The issue is, how do you look at all the reasons of why affordability doesn't work, which is actually my PhD. So what I decided to do was literally look at every single stakeholder and all the reasons that usually say no to me. One of them was the city of Montreal, more away, not Westmount, where housing took forever to get zoned for whatever reason. We can talk about that for 30 more years. But it's between 4 to 6 years to get anything zoned in certain areas of Montreal, which doesn't make any sense when you're holding the land, because then it becomes more expensive. You look at finance. Well, for a long time, people were only willing to finance high-end condos. I have no interest in building high-end condos. A lot of people do that very well. So I don't feel like we need more of that, or at least not me building more of that. I want to build something that doesn't exist and that is needed, because then you fill your buildings. If you build what people want, then they'll rent your buildings. So the main issue also is construction costs, supply chain issues. Explain to me why I have to buy a solar panel from China. We can't figure out how to make them here. I don't understand. We have an unemployment issue. Why am I buying my wood from different countries when we cut the wood here and then ship it to other places, so we can then cut it and then inject it with formaldehyde and then put it back on a boat, and then I could buy it here at a higher price? Also doesn't make any sense. So we're really looking at supply chain, making sure that we could try to buy local products, local Canada. I mean, think about it. We have a very large country. We could buy lots of really cool things. So I think it's about understanding the supply chain. Can we actually reduce those? We are working with different companies, like window companies, who are building a custom spec window for us. And they're built in Quebec, made here. Employment is an opportunity. So those are people who are going to be able to rent spaces because they have a job. So it's part of our understanding to be able to find ways that we support Quebec and Canadian economies through our supply chain, reducing our construction costs. If you do something called the design integrated approach, which means that you bring your contractors, your bankers, your lawyers, your engineers all at the same table, and you say, I want to build this, tell me all the reasons why I can't do it, and then fix it. And so that's what we actually did. So most real estate companies have a between 10 and 15% contingency on cost overruns. Well, if you design it better, there are no cost overruns. So I just saved 15%. And how do I do that? How do I make sure that that 15% that gets put back into not renting them at a higher price is what's not negotiable is my price for the end user. Everything else is negotiable. And we use a lot of marketing to make sure that people think it's cool to give us different discounts for building materials. I'll do whatever I need to do. But I think it's really important that we control construction costs. And then if you add financing, actually we did the first carbon neutral tied mortgage in North America with a bank. And they gave us preferential finance so that my cash flow allowed me to be able to build better. So if you look at everybody who makes those decisions about how to build housing, and everybody puts water in their wine and figures it out and starts from the very beginning, you actually can make it happen. So the issue around affordable housing is a decision-making problem. And then you can actually figure it out by making better decisions together with everybody's collective intelligence.
Incredible. I think you just took a stab at a segue into the next topic I want to talk about, which is it's easy to look at this problem from every angle and just think it's completely messed up. There is a bazillion things going wrong. There's no place to start. Well, Christina, not to put you on the spot and ask you to put a platform together right here, right now, but if you were to try and correct this issue, course correct the problem, and help put these communities back on track towards affordable housing, affordable communities, and building places where they thrive and grow and people live, what would you potentially do?
Okay, so leaving all the building and the technical and the wood and the windows to Natalie's side of things, I think it's really important. Like there's a bit of a narrative too, right? The developer is seen as like sort of traditionally the developer comes, or the owner comes, brings a project to the city. The city's urban planning department reviews it, sees if it meets the criteria. There should be very clear criteria of, yes, you tick these boxes, you move forward. Nobody needs, the bureaucrats should not be wasting anyone's time. They have put in the investment, so the cities need to be ready to deal with the files, not waste anybody's time. But then it's it comes into the public, and what often happens is then the politicians are left to sell the project to the public. So I've had this before where, you know, somebody's come forward with a project. Obviously, a council had to, you know, get behind it and say that they were going to support it, and then you're sort of out there on your own without feeling like, you know, the person that is developing this is now in you know, behind the coat rack, sort of hiding from it. And it's I think it's really important to sort of change that narrative. Like, you're building it. The city obviously has to set standards and parameters that meet the community's needs. But it has to be done together, and to have public consultation, to have the ability that citizens can understand what's coming to their neighborhood, what's coming to their communities. And largely that should be a good thing. It should be more neighbors in certain areas. And, you know, Montreal is seeing a decline in population. Certainly Westmount saw a big decline in population. There's room for more neighbors. But as part of that, you do need to have public consultations. They need to understand what's coming. And in there, you're going to have opposition. And you got to be able to be okay with some opposition. And if you're in municipal politics, you should, you know, get a helmet and you're going to get in the game. Like, because it's not always going to be easy, but it is. I think there's really a better way for the developers and the city officials, but also the elected officials, to all work together, because the outcome is that we want to have communities where you can stay within your community. I was talking to some people before. You know, my parents lived in Beaconsfield. They were seniors. They could no longer stay within the community that they had lived in for decades. Made it my life easier when they moved closer to me, but that's not right. We should be able to stay within our communities, and that means you're going to have different types of housing, and that it shouldn't be all a monolith of the type of housing, and that you should have some rental housing and seniors housing and some assisted seniors housing, but also just, you know, smaller apartments when you downsize from your family house that you no longer need. So I think there needs to be better communication, and I really do feel like when you were talking about supply chain and things like that, finally the federal government is really sort of focused on this. You know, I think our neighbors to the south have forced us to focus on this, but it's a critical time. I think we need to take advantage of it.
No, precisely. You said put on a helmet. I just want to say that I think you have to also put on shoulder pads and everything else, and you're still going to get a concussion. So people like Christina are amazing because they stick their necks out for the rest of you. I know I'm appreciative of my municipal politicians. I'm from Toronto, but they don't get enough credit. They definitely don't get enough credit. But absolutely, integrated societies are crucial, right? Your status should not dictate the neighborhood that you live in. You should be able to, and I guess you should be able to live anywhere, but also that's how you build the social ladder that we're so incredibly proud of here in Canada. Our social mobility is incredible, and that's because people can interact, as you said, you know, shake hands with neighbors of different types, get to know each other, human to human, and understand each other, and of course share spaces together. I think that's incredible. So it's an incredible platform to sit on. We're gonna go to the last question here, and then hit Q&A. And I'm gonna give it to Christina first, Natalie, and then we'll close with you. And that is, this is an audience who clearly cares about this issue, and I am sure that everybody here wants to do something to change the status quo. Christina, if you could deliver a message to these people here tonight on how they can help, you know, make that change, what should they do?
Well, I think as society too, we need to, we look at things. I think in Canada we have accepted that education is, you know, a right. Everybody has a right to an education. Everybody has a right to health care. But we haven't necessarily, as a society, looked at it, everybody has a right to housing, right? And I'm not saying, I'm not advocating that there's, you know, free housing or anything, but we have to change some of the legislation to allow it. So if I got a family doctor, which I don't have a family doctor, by the way, so if I had a GP and I was, you know, happy with my GP, I wouldn't then start a petition for you not to have the GP. I wouldn't be able, that would be unheard of for me to then say, okay, well, I got this, or my kid is now in the local publics, my kid goes to Roslyn School, I'm going to make sure that your kid can't come to this school. I would build another school. As a society, we would say, okay, we need, if our school's overflowing, we need another school. How we've dealt with housing a lot in the country has been the very opposite of that, in that it is we have allowed sometimes the ability to block others from coming in. And I think we got to change that narrative a little bit and help a generation that is largely locked out of the housing market be able to get into it.
That's an incredible perspective. We're protecting a resource that we should all, have access to. Natalie, I want to ask you the exact same thing. How would you instruct this audience to help make a difference, to make housing more affordable and just and buildable?
My biggest thing is that people think that housing is the municipality or federal, provincial, you name it, government and the developer. That couldn't be more wrong. Go out and become an engineer, an architect, a supply chain person, build something that can make a difference. Build a technology platform, since it's all tech stuff, that makes the decisions easier, quicker to be integrated. Everybody thinks that they have an opinion on affordable housing. I welcome you to get off your chair and do something about it.
Lovely. Thank you both, seriously, for your time and sharing all this information with us. I hope all of you walk away with a somewhat shifted perspective tonight. However, you have opportunities to continue to shift it, because now we're going to go to Q&A. So Lynn's got the microphone. She's going to bring it over to you. Hands up. We've got 15 minutes until our panelists have to leave. So we'll do about 3 or 4 questions. Let's start over here. Orange shirt. Hand was up right at the gate.
I was a little late, so maybe you addressed this, but I think Christina kind of named the elephant in the room, which is it not the case that for many, if not most Canadians, our net worth is tied up in our homes, and so that we actually prefer scarcity? I heard a great thing, which was along the lines like we're a country of owners as opposed to a country of builders. If we were deploying the same relative amounts of our net worth into like productive enterprises like factories, but in fact we're all getting rich out of the scarcity of our homes. So I think you kind of started to address that. How do we shift that attitude, if in fact there's any?
If it can be shifted, do you want to take that from a building or financing of it, or?
I'm gonna answer it, but in a weird way, if that's okay. Montreal has like an affordable housing branch of its government, the SHDM. And I remember we were having conversations a while back about you get these subsidies as a renter to be able to be a first time and affordable housing unit person that you can come in. But then when you sell it, like you get this subsidy in advance, and when you sell it or later on in life, the equity pays back some of that loan. And that makes sense because then it continues, but it also means that that unit is no longer in the affordable market. Then it becomes a market rate. And a lot of people were like, well, that's not fair. You got the subsidy, whatever. And I was like, well, how do you take away the ability of a human who invested in a real estate project, which is a condo or whatever, and then tell them that they can't make a market rate return on it? Like, that's not cool, because that's how often a lot of people figure out their retirement or being able to buy a bigger home or a home for children or in a different area. So I think that there's this whole conversation around deep affordability, which seems to be more around the rental market rather than the ownership. I would never want to tell anybody that is related to me that they couldn't make full profit on their property, because it is an investment. It's not just a place to live. A lot of people refinance stuff to start new companies or whatever. So I'm not sure that I have the solution to tell someone that they shouldn't make a return on their own properties. So, but I do feel like more and more people are unable to afford buying a property. So you're almost getting what you asked for by accident, because people can only rent now and they don't have the money to put down to buy stuff, which I don't know is also great. I think we need everything. We need more of everything. So it didn't really answer your question, but I don't know if I can.
Yeah, it's
my closest way to answer
sort of
it.
a society question, in that, as they say, the boomers own all these houses and own all this real estate that'll eventually get passed on, but it is not at this moment. And it's grown, obviously, in terms of value, but which has made a whole new generation of people not be able to get into it. Which is, I think, we are at this crossroads where it's finally, hopefully, being addressed.
Yes. I want to touch on something in particular because I was reading stats on this the other day. Canada's GDP per capita over the past 10 years, I believe, increased by 0.5%. Is the stat. Ownership, home ownership, has exploded. The value of home ownership in Canada is absolutely kaboomed. So you bring up a valid point when you say we're a nation of owners and not builders. And as we touch on it being societal, a big chunk of it is absolutely cultural. We can change that by conversations like this, as silly as it sounds. I think there's a Overton window, which a younger generation is starting to capitalize on here. And we're going to reach an inflection point if we unlock ways to build a plethora of housing and unlock new ownership and new assets that a younger generation can purchase into. It's just a matter of setting our minds to it and wanting to do it. And I hope that's what everybody here wants. Okay, yes, next question.
I feel like that gentleman was next.
Yes.
I don't know him.
It's a simple question regarding a specific politic that was.
Do you want a microphone? I'd like you to have a microphone. Thank you.
So I have a specific question regarding a policy that was applied by the city of Montreal a few years ago, and I want to hear what you have to say, both of you, if possible. Do you think the 2020 that was put in place by a certain political party did more harm for affordability or did more good through community and social housing? You're not allowed
Is this
to
being taped?
answer.
Yeah.
It's safe to say.
It's actually being
It
live
actually is
streamed.
being
No.
Well, it didn't work.
I plead the fourth,
So,
fifth, seventh.
fifth.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't work, right? It was proven that it didn't work. So, but it doesn't mean we should all walk away and abandon the notion of different types of housing and different different models. But clearly, that one didn't work.
I think it was the approach. I think the idea was good in theory. And I actually took some of that idea and decided to do it in other cities besides Montreal because all of our projects are outside of Montreal. The 2020 is also not really applicable in an area that has no school. So when you are, for the people who don't know what 2020 is, 20% affordable, 20% social, and 20% family, just in case people didn't know what that was. As a developer, we had that written in our foreheads for a long time. Family housing, super awesome, amazing, great. However, if you're in an area that doesn't have a school, families are not going to move into that area. So this is around Griffintown, a project that I worked on for 10 years and fell flat on my face. Trying to bring in a school, by the way. That's a whole other conversation about how you could build schools and finance them. I do feel that I would like to have affordability in my own projects. So I took that idea and I do it in cities that don't require me to do it. So when one of our projects is in Lévis, Quebec, and we came to the city and said, we're gonna put 15% affordable housing in our own properties. And they're like, but we didn't ask you to. And I was like, well, I'm also gonna build a 30% park in your area that's open to the entire community, paid for by me. They're like, what? And so I think that we have to lead by example and not by regulation. So did the 2020 work the way that it was drafted? No. Was it a good idea? Yes. So how do we get there? I don't know. I think it could just have a different format, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat any of what you said, but I think the idea too is the premise of it was to keep people on the island of Montreal, to keep people within these communities. And if you're an employer, you see it, you see the impact of that, of people, especially, teachers, people that work, certainly people who work for the city. If you're working in our public works department and you could work in Chambly or you could work in Westmount and have to live on and commute this great length, that has a cost. Obviously, then the on-island jobs like that end up having to be higher paid because you got to try and attract people back onto the island. So I think the spirit of it was multifaceted, but in practical terms, it didn't work.
It should have been an incentive and not a requirement.
Good closer. Let's see, question. Any other questions? I'm going to go blue shirt right here, and then we'll go to you next, okay?
Oh, she's
Philippe, that would be you. You're the blue shirt. Is it not blue?
Sorry?
It's
You're
blue.
Yeah. Philippe, would you like to ask a question? Oh, no,
trying to get
don't
He's-
worry about it.
Everybody's being announced with what color
Felipe,
shirt they're
my-
wearing.
My apologies, yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much. I live in Westmount.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been here in Canada since 2023. I have no idea how, with my family, we reached that city because we were totally new. I moved here with my family to study. I love the city. I participated in some activities when you were like the mayor or the community was asking for consultation.
Mhm.
And no young people were there.
No.
So I
Correct.
feel myself like so apart from the conversation. Now I start working here. Again, I love Westmount. I want my kids right there. But it's impossible to get a house there. And what I want to share from me, because I'm a builder. I've been in constructions during my whole life. Now I work in AI. My career path is very complex, so that is something that I love actually. Even in my LinkedIn, I put myself like an AI builder because I just brainstorm now. So how people like me can contribute to involve more people in this conversation? Because even I moved
Beautiful.
here and there are young people and I'm passionate about how can I contribute. I feel myself with a lot of energy to help. I hear you and I almost was crying when I hear your speech. So because it feels so. If you have a time later. That's my question. How can we contribute and how we can push young people to be part of this talk?
That's a good
Really
thing.
good question. That's a great question. Really good question.
Okay, so first of all, one of my favorite things, as when I was mayor, one of my favorite things to do was to meet new residents and to understand why they chose the community. And it was often people like you that chose it. There were schools and parks and hockey teams and soccer teams and an incredible library and all of those things that you would want in your community. So I'm very pleased to meet you as well. But it is, I mean, the vote, like there's so much as part of it. And yes, we would go to these public consultations and I would look out and it was all one, you know, everybody was of one age group and it was not younger people, not like, and you know, a spattering of younger people would come to council meetings and say like, hey, what about my voice as well? So I spent a lot of time trying to seek out those voices. And so when people would scream at me, you're not listening to me. And I was like, I am listening to you. I am absolutely listening to you, but I'm not only listening to you. And it's really important for community leaders, for politicians, to hear all the voices, not just the ones that are yelling at you. And it is the voter turn, like we got to get more people voting. And so you'll never find me, there's someone here from City Council tonight, Sean Moss is over there. He will never find me commenting or criticizing on a project that the city is doing or anything like nobody needs another like Belle-Mère involved in the situation. But where I will comment and will get involved is like on a larger scale across the country. We need more young people engaged in municipal politics. The voter turnout rate on a spectacular year is about 35%, 38%. There is no government that will touch you more than your municipal government. From your day-to-day, from your snow plowing to your parks to if there's a soccer team for your kid. And we need more people to care and more people to vote. And that's your sort of first citizen action is to vote and to be involved. And I would like to think that I feel like we're at a critical point in history, in our country where like it's affecting everybody. So younger people need to get engaged. I mean, the voter turnout rate from 18 to 24, we don't have the data yet for 2025, but in the 2021 election in Montreal was 20%. And that's probably, those 20% probably live at home with their parents still who like drag them to the poll on the Sunday.
Maybe.
It's really, really important that we get more people involved, get more people engaged, but also not just you can't just listen to the complainers because there's so many other voices out there. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of just listening to the complainers.
Absolutely. I actually want to touch on that too. I'm 25 years old. I am within the age bracket of people who had poor turnout to elections 4 years ago. I'm not sure how many of you grew up in Canada. I did. But I was always taught that politics is lame and not cool and not something that you want to get involved in because it is so polarized. It was crazy how much I believed that up until about 2024, when something like just flipped in my head, and I was like, actually, this is really cool, and I care about this place, and I care about this community, and I care about the people I live alongside, and I think we should all band together. It doesn't matter what you get involved in, but getting involved in democracy is a really powerful thing. So as a young person, from another one, I encourage you to continue going out and doing things and getting involved, and to bring people together just like this, and get them involved in the discussion, because it has much more power than you realize. Democracy is as simple as a couple conversations. So really cool question. It just hit me really deep. We have time for one more question.
The gentleman right there.
Yes, I promised you that one. Yes.
I want to go back to the topic of supply chain and the absurdity of importing wood from other countries, since
Sorry.
we have the most wood
A country of
any
forests.
country in the world. And my question is there an opportunity at the national level to incentivize all of the builders to only build with wood, discard glass or steel, and say this country is just going to focus on wood and we're going to make it our expertise and export that to other countries, and it's their supply chain that will anything wood in it.
I'm assuming you want me to answer that.
I'm going to leave the wood supply chain to Natalie,
Okay.
but a
so,
great Canadian resource. So.
There are many different ways to use wood in a building. It could be structural. It could be also facades. It could be all kinds of stuff. There is a very strong building code that is associated to fire retardancy, and it's not as easy as people think. We've been trying for years to build in bois massif. I don't actually know what that is in English. Big wood.
Okay.
Yeah. But the situation is that because we don't have the supply chain in the way, forget legislation, because right now in Quebec, actually, you could build up to 6 stories in wood. They're working on 12. In Vancouver, you could build 20 stories in wood. So it really depends on where you are. The building code is not necessarily equal. There's a great nonprofit organization called Bois. I don't know if anybody's heard of them. They're the ones that are helping developers to try to use more wood in their properties. If you're talking about biophilie, which I also don't know what that is in English, it's about using wood in nature and understanding that health and wellness needs to come into buildings. The end user still wants the concrete building because they think it's safer. So if I can't rent my spaces because people don't want to be in a building that is whatever, so we're working now with a different way. We're pushing heavily on modular. But we do modular. Most of our units are 150 units per building. It's not the same thing. Modular is easier for single homes, stuff like that. If you're looking at carbon footprint, a single home is not actually the best thing for the planet. So yes, but there's also a lot of wood that is not necessarily structural that we should be using. Whether it's press wood underneath, different ways to use cladding or whatever. There's many ways to use wood first to get people more used to wood, even having interior designers use more wood exposed. So I think we have like a long way to go before people are going to be able to adopt only building in wood. Please remember that the reason people stop building in wood is because our cities caught fire, which is why things changed and why people started building in concrete and steel and things like that. I think people are going to move away a little bit from steel because it's so expensive right now, because we have steel or we have stuff that's made into steel, but we have to actually manufacture it in the States. So things are changing. And for concrete, there's actually different ways of using structural mechanisms through wood to use less concrete and to use carbon injected concrete where you're actually doing carbon sequestering. So there's better ways of using concrete. So yes, all of this has to change. Building methodology has to change, but it's not an all or nothing. And we need more Canadian wood companies to build cool stuff that I can buy and put in my buildings. Because sometimes I want to do stuff and then I have to import it from somewhere else. And if anybody's a real kooky environmental person, you have scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 3 is a mess because I can't even figure out where my things come from sometimes. And people will say it's a Quebec product, but it's only the company's head office in Quebec. but they buy all their stuff from somewhere else. So a lot of the definitions are also changing. So a very long story short, I think we're very far from building everything in wood for many reasons, including fire codes. But I think that we should be incorporating natural materials on a much larger scale so that we can prove that as a success and then move on to the next one. Because a lot of people need incremental change and not full change, because the biggest barrier to affordable, great carbon neutral housing is I don't want it because. Same thing about your people who are coming to say no.
Yeah.
I get told on a regular basis from engineers and architects that I can't do it. So the good thing is that I can take another architect, and it's a little harder for you to just get new constituents. I don't know.
But they, just on that point, I think what we're seeing at the federal level certainly is a willingness and an openness for the major projects, right? So whether that's, pipelines or mines or whatever it may be, but also a focus on our natural resources. I encourage you all, reach out to your federal MPs, reach out to your provincial MNAs, let your elected officials know how you feel, and that these issues are important to you. And I assure you, they read it, it gets to them. And I think this is a key issue that I would write to your federal MP and let them know how you feel about this.
Lovely. Okay, we're at time, so a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you again. Yeah, just to close, we're here for another hour and a bit, so feel free to mingle, get to know one another. I encourage you, as we were just discussing, to discuss ideas and things that you care about and actions that you want to do that make your city, your province, your country a better place. Yeah, that's everything. So enjoy it. Have a great night.
Thanks so much.
That was great.
We
should do a road show.
I know, we're a good team there.
There are the great
That was really
questions.
well done.
No problem.
You were an excellent
Well,
partner.
she's like,